Hi guys, so welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to start a new kind of series. I feel like this is going to kind of encompass a lot of things that I want to talk about on my channel, and I want to call it Tough Mothering. And basically what I'm planning on addressing in this series is I want to start talking about things that have been difficult for me as a mom, and I wanted to kind of open up to you about some of my personal struggles, but also hopefully with talking about my personal struggles and how I've handled being a mother the last 6 years of my life. I want to hopefully encourage some of you if you might be struggling with the same things. So my first subject I wanted to talk about was basically the mommy wars. So if you are a mother, you have probably heard arguments whether you should work full-time, work part-time, stay at home. And I don't know if you're like me, but when I first started having kids, I had a full-time job. And when we first got pregnant with our oldest, we were kind of in a bit of a financial pickle. We weren't like completely destitute, but it was just after the 2009 crash, and it took my husband after that about 2.5 years to get back to like full-time work, because he works in construction, carpentry type stuff, and so he had a really hard time because he was in the middle of an apprenticeship. So he was kind of at that point where he had not enough experience, but he also didn't have but he also had some experience. So he was kind of in that weird awkward point where he was not the cheapest person for them to hire, so they didn't want to hire him, but also he didn't have enough experience to be a full-fledged journeyman yet, so people didn't want to hire him for that either. So anyway, so long story short, I got pregnant with our daughter, and luckily enough I was working, and so I had insurance, my husband had insurance, and we were trying to kind of get back on our feet. Truthfully, we almost lost our house because we paid as many payments as we could, but we got to the point where we had zero income, so paying our house payment was impossible. So we finally were working with the bank and ended up having to do some restructuring with the loan, and we're able to basically save our house, which was amazing. But I remember when I was probably about halfway along my pregnancy, I wanted to stay home. I was raised in a home where my mother stayed home. I had a lot of friends who, once they started having babies, they stayed home, and it was just very, I guess, the popular thing to do. And I really struggled with it because my husband basically flat out said, we can't afford it. You make a decent income, and my income was more consistent than his, because if you know how the construction world works, it is very up and down. There are kind of feast or famine sometimes. So it was hard because I felt like I should be allowed to stay home, and I wanted to stay home. But after I had my daughter and after I went back to work, I remember being like, okay, this isn't as bad as I thought it was. We did find a pretty good daycare. It was based out of a church, which we felt like it was kind of the best of both worlds. It was still kind of a center, but it was also had kind of that more home daycare feel. So we felt really good about that. So I stayed at my job. I went back after about 10, 11 weeks, and the reason why I went back to work that soon was because I had to quit work early because I had some health complications with my oldest, and to be honest, I enjoyed being a working mom. There were so many benefits that I liked about it. I felt like I had kind of an external, how do I say it, kind of an external force, an external kind of outlet to kind of do something, have an identity outside of just being a mom, and I really enjoyed it until I had my second and was pregnant with my third, and I really struggled at that point. My biggest issue though was mostly childcare. So we don't have a lot of family close by, or the family that we do have close by all work full time, or they have their own childcare issues. So it was one of those things where I felt like, you know, when we were pregnant with our third baby, I was just like, I don't know, should I stay home? Should I not? But it was hard because I had it in my head that like being a working mom was the right way to be, because, you know, I was earning money. We were able to do a few extra things around, you know, like we went on some nicer trips. We were able to do some like remodels to our house. We had fixed it up some more, and we were feeling pretty good about life. But it was pretty interesting because, of course, I grew up in the Christian culture, I guess is the best way to say it, and I still consider myself a Christian. I have traditional beliefs in that way. But I really struggled with being a working mom in that kind of environment because it is almost like not really the popular thing. It's a little bit more different now because I think, you know, people kind of get it why women work. I kind of struggled with it because I felt like it was kind of the popular thing to do, and part of me is a bit of a rebel and I don't want to do what's popular. I want to do what I think is right. So I think I was probably about halfway through my pregnancy. I guess I was close to 6 months pregnant with my youngest, thinking I'm probably just gonna take my normal 3 months off and go back to work. Until I basically got an email saying, oh, by the way, we're ending your project and we don't have anything else for you, so sorry, but you have about a week. We'll let you go through the week, but after this week you're done. And oddly enough, it happened to be the week of my birthday. And I'm like, really? On my birthday? And even worse off is I worked Monday and Tuesday, and then I ended up working from home on Wednesday because I was just like kind of stressed out and just like I need to take time, and I was allowed to work from home 1 day a week. And so I ended up coming home, and then after Wednesday they're like, yeah, you're done after today. And I was just like, whoa. It's kind of, in a sense, I do believe that it was divine intervention. I do believe that I was struggling with whether I should work or whether I should stay home, and I did pray like, okay, God, if this is what you want, then you're gonna have to make something big happen in order for me to notice. So then I stayed home because I was 6 months pregnant, and I did kind of look for a job after that, but you know, let's be honest, nobody's gonna hire somebody who's 6 months pregnant to work and then take, you know, work for what, 6 months and then take 3 months off and maybe be back or not. So I started staying home, and so I've officially been a stay-at-home mom for about over a year. And I'm going to be 100% honest with you, it has kind of been up and down, like a lot. I have really, it's been kind of a struggle. Now, I think part of the struggle has been because when I first started staying home, I thought I was going to be like Susie Homemaker. I was gonna make like homemade fresh cooked meals. I was gonna do Pinterest projects with my kids, and it was gonna be like, you know, everyone would get along, everything would be great. But the first 2 weeks were really rough. So no, actually it was more like the first month, because I lost my job at the end of October, and then we ended up having a pre-planned vacation like the end of October, beginning of November. We went to Disneyland. And we ended up like coming home, and so I guess it was about the month of November I was really struggling. And the biggest issues was I feel like my kids were trying to get used to having me home, and I think a lot of it too is they both thought, because I only had 2 at the time, that they both thought that, oh, mommy's home, we can do whatever we want, we don't have to listen to mommy. Because unfortunately when I did work full-time, I absolutely was when I did work full-time, I'm just going to be honest with you, I was too tired to deal with them most days. So I just kind of let them run amok a little bit, because I would get up and they'd get up at 6 o'clock. I'd drop them off at 6:30, and then I'd be at work and I'd get home and I'd pick them up at like 4:30, 5 o'clock. And then it was like dinner and bath time and bed, and they were in bed by 7:30, 8, because, you know, they needed to be up at 6 o'clock the next morning. And so in some ways I was almost like shocked with kind of how bad of a parent I had been, because in some ways, I'm not saying all working parents do this, but for me, I was just too tired, and I didn't have the energy to do anything fun with the kids. And so going from like having like a break from your kids, because let's be honest, like spending all day with a 3 and 5-year-old trying to keep them happy, keep them entertained, keep them from not wanting to rip each other's heads off was very difficult. And I did not realize how difficult it would be. And to be honest, I'm like, I don't want to do this. I want to go back to work. I can't do this. I can't do this. But what really helped me in the beginning, and I do want to make more videos on like how how things go, what is life like staying home and stuff like that. But one of the things that I think really helped me is I got a membership at the YMCA. We did, it was in December, and they had some promotion going where you just bring in, I think it was like 5 canned goods per person, and there were 4 of us at the time. So it was like, I mean, we spent maybe like $30 on the registration fee, which I think is normally like $75. And I remember like the first couple times I went and I dropped the girls off and I went and I just walked the track and I had my headphones in and I listened to a couple podcasts, some music. I was absolutely floored at how much better I felt. And I honestly believe that doing the YMCA, and I'm still there a year later, we still go every week for at least twice a week, if not more. I was amazed at how much better I felt after like getting up, getting the kids going and doing something like going to the YMCA and coming home. So, but of course, as pregnancy progressed and I had my 3rd child, you know, I had to take a break for a while because you're not allowed to work out for at least 6 weeks after. And then after that, I finally got back into it. But I think what's really hard for me, or at least was in the beginning, was just dealing with feeling like, am I good enough as being a stay-at-home mom? Am I doing the right thing, staying home with my kids? Because at least when I had a job, I had kind of something that I feel like was more socially acceptable. Because I feel like nowadays, like working a job is just what you do. And what's funny is what really spurred this thought on was we are building our house, which I've already told you. And we met, so it's a new kind of development and there's several new homes being built like right now. Like there were no houses there, and now I think we're number 6 and there's like 12 or 13 different like properties that haven't been bought yet either. So we met one of our new neighbors and they were moving in one of the days that we were working on our property. And he's like, one of the things is he was like, oh, so what do you do? And I was like, I was thrown off. I didn't know how to answer that question because I felt like, I don't know, what do I do? Obviously, I keep 3 children alive. I take them to school. I feed them, take them to the doctor. I mean, there's things that I do, but I could not believe how off guard that caught me. And it almost makes me feel like society does not place a lot of value on women who stay home. And obviously it's different because, you know, in my church, there's a lot of women that stay home. In my, you know, in the community, like the school community, I feel like there's several women who stay home. But I also feel like it's definitely almost kind of considered the choice of either you have to because you can't afford childcare and a job, or you're like so rich that you don't need to work, so you can just like, you know, as my mom would say, sit on your pillow all day and eat bonbons. But it's kind of sad in a sense how things like, even like, it's funny because even now that I think about it, I still know that there are women that will vehemently defend their choice whether to work or stay at home, and vehemently believe that who's doing the opposite of what they're doing is the wrong thing. And in some ways, I don't know if it's just women, like female nature, that we tend to be highly competitive people, so we have to always feel that what we're doing is like super right as opposed to super wrong. But I guess I feel like overall, I'm glad that I'm home. I think that being home has made me a better person. I think it's taught me patience. It's also taught me to not always be judging, you know, my life by what other people do. And so if I were to say working or staying home, I think overall, I do think staying home is the best for our family right now. One of the bigger things too is my husband, his work schedule is so crazy that we don't really, if I was working it would just add that extra layer of stress. Now, are there days that I want to go back to work? Absolutely. And have I looked recently for jobs? Sure. But the problem is, I just want the right opportunity to come along, and I don't want to be getting out of staying home because I feel like I'm not a good enough mom. And sometimes I worry that that's my reason for wanting to go back to work, is because I don't feel like I'm good enough being home. But then, like I said, I don't think I was that great when I worked either. So I'm sorry if this got kind of rambly, but it's just kind of my thoughts on the mommy wars and whether or not they're warranted, and just the struggles of, like, I did not realize how difficult it was going to be to stay home, but in some ways I feel like I've grown so much as a mom and as a person too. I mean, obviously there are women out there that work, and that's totally cool, and I know you're doing what's best for your family, because I did the same thing. But I also feel like, you know, it's okay to be, you know, it's okay to not be okay with your situation, but it's also okay to be okay with your situation. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below, and thanks so much for watching. I'll talk to you later.